Hello, YouTube, and welcome all who are watching. I'm Jesse Tovar, and this is My Place Cafe Poetry Night. My Place was busy last month. We had storytelling, poetry prose. Spectrum Publishing took over with their big poetry slam. Tonight's featured poet was also in the big poetry slam. Before I go further, My Place Cafe is located within Henteam Square, 2057 North Los Robles Avenue, Suite 10, Pasadena, California, at the corner of Los Robles and Woodbury. My place is open every day from 7 a.m., 7:30 a.m. to 2 p.m. Mike Sonskin, host of Storytelling Poetry Prose, and also featured in Spectrum Publishing, was one of several authors who wrote a testimonial for tonight's featured poet, Joshua Corwin. It's actually right at the very top of Joshua's book. This testimonial by Sonskin is for Corwin's debut poetry collection, Becoming Vulnerable, where Sonskin says Corwin relentlessly peels away layer after layer of his fears and insecurities to reveal a contagious poet using the word for redemption. Joshua Corwin is also the editor and producer of Assiduous Dust, home of the OTSCP Volume 1. OTSCP is an acronym for On the Spot Collaborative Poem, a style of poem Corwin invented. In Becoming Vulnerable, Corwin is often reflective. He also borrows from traditions of the Beat Generation. Little Ensos frequently pauses so the reader can slowly think about each line. Corwin uses 55,555 as a metaphor for the phrase so many times in the poem 55,555. And Corwin told me a few minutes ago that this is actually a true story where he actually did the calculation himself without the use of a calculator. Isn't that amazing? So for me, I'm actually best familiar with Corwin's poetry because we both appear in Spectrum Publishing. When Corwin released Becoming Vulnerable last April, he was one of the first to have a virtual book launch. In one Spectrum issue we're both in, he goes meta about his books release and looking back, I am enough. Tonight, Latanya Smith and I welcome Joshua Corwin.
Thank you so much, Jesse and Latanya. You guys are awesome, and thank you, My Place Cafe. It's a great place, and you guys should totally support your local cafe wherever because they need business. It's important, and that's where all the local coffee shops are where poets people gather, and we can't wait to once everything opens up even more to gather even more. So please support your local coffee venue. Please support My Place Cafe and be groovy. um yeah, I'm going to start off with reading some from my book, Becoming Vulnerable. And I'll talk a little bit about some of the poems and give some context behind them. So that'll be pretty groovy. And I want to start with reading 12:01 a.m. I like to stand while reading, so I will move this slightly. Um, yeah, 12:01 a.m. I can hear the shine in your eyes on the other end of the telephone. When I speak like this, I feel authentic and not heavy. I don't have to tattoo meaning in the air to know what you mean. I remember when you first told me, apropos of nothing, about the different levels of charitable donation. I was sitting right across from you, over there. You in that armchair, me in this one, our eyes. You said there's the donor who gives large sums and puts a placard on the wall signifying who it's from. And then there's the other one who gives but remains anonymous. Your words hanging like a phantom. I didn't have to be who I thought I was. You were once me, once where I was. In that moment, I knew. So 12:01 a.m. Was first published in Alchemia Poetica by the lovely Marie McCrivian, and that was published back in 2019, and that was my second published poem, and it's also in this book, Becoming Vulnerable. And the poem is actually about my, I'm about an actual experience I had on the phone at 12:01 a.m. And I remember at 12:01 a.m. I was sitting in my car and somebody said, I can hear, and I said, I can hear the shine in your eyes on the other end of the telephone. When I speak like this, I feel authentic and not heavy. And I realized, wow, this is a poem. I need to write this down. And I wrote more. Hence, I'll sit in cars continuously and just write. And it's about me sharing personal secrets with someone, sharing my heart and soul, which is part of in recovery and in sobriety, a process where we kind of share our secrets and divulge who we are and deal with fears, resentments, and all that stuff. So I was across from my mentor doing that, and he was once like me. And in that moment, I knew I was okay. And it was a beautiful process. And so I happened to be at 12:01 a.m. saying these words. And before that, at 12 a.m., I was speaking with my mentor about reflecting on that moment when I opened my heart and soul to that person. And I thank him dearly. The next poem, is speaking of gratitude, is gratitude um, after breakfast. Uh, that poem really highlights the important nature for me of how I used to be before, in the morning, before I used and drank, um, what I was drinking and using, and what it was like for my morning routine, and then what it was like um, sober, and what I do now to reflect that. And that's really important for me to know that I'm a different person. Even though I'm the same person, I'm a different person. And yes, so this is the poem, Gratitude After Breakfast. I used to think that meditation was a hoax, that enlightenment was for those interred in the ground. I used to think it was impossible to cease thinking for more than 5 seconds. I secretly believed I knew everything. I used to deem gratitude an unnecessary word. I hated to stretch my cheekbones into a smile. I was convinced everyone was a phony. I used to think I was the shit. I used to think I was a piece of shit. I would be paralyzed by fear for hours. I would argue with mirrors, threatening to pound my fists into the clear. I used to curse the reflection I feared. I used to stay up all night, dancing in sorrow, without consent, my entire body convulsing. I watched the sun rising, sadness and despaired like a mourner, outside rising, inside dying. I used to not know if I was lying or telling the truth. I spent hours wrestling with my God, myself. I wake up in the morning and I say the Shema. Then I make my bed, wash my hands. I wake up in the morning and I walk to the room next door and I sit in a chair, listen for an hour. I wake up in the morning And sometimes I feel light as a feather. Then I make breakfast, smile as I wash my bowl. I wake up in the morning and I smile at the man in the mirror. And I take a shower, hug my soul. I wake up in the morning and I thank God. I know I'm not him. Thank you. So that's reflecting on me in the morning in two stages of my life. Let me put my hat back on here. An important thing also for me is not just focusing on addiction and recovery, because that's an important part of this book and also of my life, um, but also autism. Um, I'm someone who is on the spectrum. I'm on the autism spectrum, and I like to say that I'm a neurodiverse individual, not a neurodivergent, because I find that a little different. And we're not divergent; we're diverse. And I like to say that I have autism, not that I am autistic, and that's just my personal choice. I've lectured about that at UCLA, and I think that's important. In this poem, the update talks about uh, what it's like for me with autism. Every now and then, I fall on the floor. Happens every now and then, once a year or so, sometimes more. I fall on the floor and I'm unable to articulate as I'm doing now. I'm unable to speak, and it is incredibly nerve wracking and anxiety filled and just scary. And what happens uh, is it's just haunting. And I realize that maybe it's just because all the sensory information that's coming to me. And I, as someone who is neurodiverse and not atypical, living in a typical world, and eventually, this happens to me, and it is a kind of update. So I wrote this poem, and the next time I fell on the floor, I was able to practice gratitude and reflecting on my life. And this is the update, that reflection. The update. I tread transgressions against how far I've come as a kid diagnosed on the autism spectrum at the age of 5, processing delay at 6, along with anxiety disorder and ADHD. I don't want to repeat circles with my feet, one smaller and the other reminds me of my mind. Neurotypical, also alcoholic. Thank God I'm sober, but that's another story. Like a pacifist in rage, I need to accept my brain chemistry, but persevere. Circles, those feet make them quake, and color loses its vivacity. Like the squeamish self I am, just see me at the doctor. Please, don't. I'm embarrassed by how I fade. Oh, it's so hard to fit in when you're hardwired to differ. Range like a spectrum of shapes. I circle, but I transcend. But because I do, I have these fits. Usually every 3 months or so, sometimes once a year. It comes from acting typical when you're atypical. Did I tell you I had to learn thousands of idioms? I thought when someone said it's raining cats and dogs that it was. Flashcards of rules. I don't want to rock back and forth as I pass on going out the door because I am now the floor, unable to speak when I have so much to say. That happens every now and then. My feet repeat themselves in circles around a shape, a square, rectangle, or circle perfect. The kitchen table where dad is late because he's paying the bills so I can get the therapy I need speech therapy to learn idioms like "it's raining cats and dogs." I feel like it's raining cats and dogs. The words and screams of atypicality in dysfunctional familiic ways, words invented. I have so much to hear, I have so much to say. I'm trying not to repeat the circle and fall on the ground, but perhaps I need to fall. But perhaps putting on the guise and persevering like I do, perhaps I need to fall. Perhaps I need to circle. How else could I draw the line of when it's time to stop the update? Thank you. That was first published in Placeholder Press, uh, December 31st, 2019. So much has changed since then. So much. And it's surprising. It's almost been like another world. Um, I want to read one more poem. I might read more from this book, Becoming Vulnerable, which you can get at www.joshuacorwin.com. Selfless plug. Uh, or not selfless, selfful plug, selfish plug. Um, this book is also to honor my grandpa. My grandpa Mert was an educator. He did some acting also. He was on Little Rascals. He was an educator, and he was really important to me. And when I he always wanted me to write a book of poetry or get my writing just out there. And we would have these amazing conversations, and I really miss him. And he inspired me to write a collection because, as part of my amends in my recovery, um, one of my things is let me honor him and get my words out there. And he was passing away and in the hospital back in summer of 2019. And I thought, I really need to do this. Let me just start writing. So I started writing, and this is one of the poems that became part of this book. Hello, Grandpa. This is for you, Grandpa Mert. I have a special relationship with hummingbirds. My mom told me they are the smallest birds in the world. They represent gratitude and humility, love, and God shots. The latter needs some explaining. Let me hum. God graced me with sobriety on August 13th, 2015. I was sitting on a park bench around the corner from my parents' house at this place called the View Site, overlooking valleys, peaks, nadirs, and zeniths, representative of despair and the bottomless pit, an abyssal gourd of trees, and against my raison d'etre, smoking a joint and looking to the sky, overlooking Pacific Coast Highway. I didn't know why I was smoking and doing what I was doing. This substance, no longer sustenance for me. My dog by my internal fireside, peering deep into my inferno, blazing like the doobie. Dubious, I cried out, answerless. No response, no reason. Pain, psychic and depressive, feeling psychotic. At one of my first 12-step anonymous meetings, a fellow in this group of brave souls banded together to redirect the flames to burn brightly rather than skewer wild bulwers, shared about hummingbirds and godshots. Little events, coincidences, and winks from God. Doesn't mean anything, it's just a visible wink, blinking in and out, sumic vessels, breaths, smiles. I regained my faith in Judaism through the process of the 12 steps, particularly with receiving anonymous Hasidic text and 9-step amends to my childhood rabbi. When I was nearly 2 years sober, I moved into an apartment by myself, living on my own. A neighbor above would shine a hummingbird feeder out my window balcony greeted song and winged love. I'd hear their wings flapping, music napping, solace to resound within as I meditate. Once in a while, I'd sip from a coffee mug given by my mother, a hummingbird etched red. Begin each day with a grateful heart, and I'd sip, drink in the hummingbird humming, hovering outside my window, the neighbor casting ballots of golden chimes as cars passed on Figueroa. We would look each other in the eyes, angel and man. Angelic, this winged waiter would dish out gratitude, me sipping coffee from its etched Talmud, listen to rabbinical analysis on YouTube, and would follow me showering the dove into my own personal mikvah of song. Sometimes these creatures would present and protect themselves to me on the grassy mounds of belonging out in Claremont. I meditate, rejoice, and remember. Eyes closed, open dove songs from solace sheltered in the Lord, belonging not just to the grassy pasture place, but also to the winged bird inside me, resonating raison d'etre. When I taught a one-day course, God shot too long to express. Some bits and pieces I'll address. I pulled a book out from the Honnold Mudd Library. I was bored and exhausted reading philosophy of language seminar, and I was drawn to a book, Consciousness and Tradition. I took the book, read, and felt myself humming, hovering, that feeling remembered again. I found it in my bag a few days later when I taught a course on the art of story weaving experience, sitting on the patio of the inside out classroom at Harvey Mudd. Muddy waters washed away as a hummingbird hovered above my shoulder. Yesterday was July 27th. I drove to the view site, the place where I last used, to scatter there ashic, dustic, rustic remains of my late grandpa Mert. The dishes in my soul sink, emotionally tone deaf in my solar plexus, an aortic authenticity. I called a friend from the 12-step meeting I first attended. I was humming soon. 5 minutes early, I sat there before family arrived. In peace, I read recovery literature given to me when I felt like carrying on my shoulders suicide, handed to me by the man who showered words at my first anonymous meeting about hummingbirds and God shots. As I read, a hummingbird descended to greet me. "Hello, Grandpa," I said. It vanished. Grandma and others appeared from the distance, roaming this dusty forest of memories. Words and videos were spoken, murmured, and hummed. Narration and song. Yes, I'm leaving on a jet plane. Don't know when I'll be back again. As ashes scattered, our lot departed on the trunk of an old, wise tree with knowledge, and the earth returned a hummingbird. "Hello, Grandpa." So that's all true, true stuff. Um, and Godshot, I like to say, is a little wink of the universe, showing her, kind of telling you that you know, you know, there's something here, and you're on the right path, and to keep on continuing where you're at. Um, I like to think of it as these little coincidences or events where another person, people kind of coincide, and we see little winks from the spirit of the universe or whatnot, and they kind of define us, but they also don't have to define us, but they send us on our way and let us know that we're on the right path and to keep on going. And I think that's important in this day and age. Um, I want to shift gears to this book, Pause Healing the Earth. poetry edited by Kalpa Singh Chitnis. It's a lovely anthology. I'm in it, published with River Paw Press. They're doing another uh, another anthology, and also Kalpa Singh Chitnis has her Elemental book with River Paw Press coming out, and this came out for Earth Day, and I'm in this, and I want to talk about my dog, who was there when I was sitting at the view site, the last place I used, the same place where ashes were scattered. Um, and the hummingbird came to greet me twice. The one I believed was my grandfather's spirit, and this is about um, that moment. Give me a second here to find the place. Um, in the meantime, what I will say is that my favorite color is red, and it is red because I decided one day that um, that would be my favorite color when I was in kindergarten, and therefore I could not change it because you only have one favorite color. Aha! Speaking of colors, thank you for the rainbow. This is from my dog Bogey, who was uh, with me that day. Thank you for the rainbow, for Bogey. I love you, but you shat on my shoe with the rainbow. I love you, and you clearly love me because you told me where heaven is with your eyes. I remember it clear as day. 8 p.m. Wednesday, August 12th, 2015. I was sitting near the view site overlooking Pacific Coast Highway, the summer solstice of the night. You stared at me as if to say, I love you. Why are you doing this to yourself? Josh, why are you killing yourself? One hit, one drink at a time. I didn't understand the rainbow, floating on the ground, blessing my shoes. I thought you were forcing me to pick up my mind made feces. Smoking woe, I wondered, misunderstood by you, by myself, by God, which I didn't really believe in, like the rainbow. I've seen sky give birth to rainbow, a pointillist Pollock, exploding knives like an Enso. But I didn't understand myself, my actions, your sadness, as I sat there smoking woe, not knowing why I was so sad and why you seemed to echo my mirage. Thank you for giving me that look, for puncturing my whole universe with your eyes. Thank you for believing in the rainbow, even though I thought I was a piece of shit, trampling all over myself. Thank you for warming me up on nights when I felt like carrying suicide on my shoulder. Thank you for burning a sad look of I love you into my heart, which still burns. Thank you. So that is thank you for the rainbow. And that's for my dog, Bogey. I was there that day, um, last day I used. And it's important, if you have a pet, hold your pet tight, never let them go. And remember that the living don't die, the living live. Uh, they're with you forever. I'm going to read a poem that is in Spillwords Press, and it's called Growing Older. This was published back in August of last year, and it won the 2021 Spillwords Press Award for Poetic Publication of the Year. And it's called Growing Older, and I really like this one, and I hope you do too. And when I think about this poem, I think about how, imagine this individual who grew old and lived this life, um, where in his childhood he was, he or she, they just love the world with all its just fluctuations and changes and the unexpected nature of life, but somehow they grew bitter and somehow uh, got lost to the world and lost in all the mundane that we face, but then kind of realized upon dying um, that you know what, that it's okay, and they had a beautiful life, as I've had a beautiful life, and we all have had a beautiful life. And it's the day before Mother's Day, so go get your mom a gift and or thank her. Um, pray for her soul if she's gone wherever. Just you know, take your mother figure and just say thank you for giving me life so that I can realize I've had a beautiful life as I grow older. This is growing older. Return my distant sorrows from magnolias, branched and blossomed beyond the lucid air. Where have you gone, my gentle ghost? We share the shore with naive excitement, like dreamers waiting for the illusion to be over, or for the prosecution to rest its case in silent house. I lay awake, drunk with memories, and watch the azure lake dry up all my sorrows. Once I was young and weary from all the noise life had to offer. I knew better then than I do now. So that's growing older. I think it's important that during these times people can face suicidal ideation or depression, and that's actually something that I've struggled with, that I haven't talked as much about, and I have a collection that won the Spectrum of Publishing for second place. Congrats to Radomir on first place for the 2021 San Gabriel Valley Poetry Festival for the book contest, and it's How an Orchid Stays Alive, and it's got second place, was a second place finalist, and it's about my experience with suicidal ideation, depression, um, friends going to the hospital, COVID, and just loss, and uh, love, as all things are. And this is an experience that I wrote down, a suicidal ideation experience, and it's the title piece of that collection. Just still seeking a publisher, by the way, if you're interested, if you're a publisher watching. This is How an Orchid Stays Alive. Immobilized in my armchair butterfly, life keeps me down. It felt like my body was being stretched. Heaven's thunder threatens me. Crawl back to bedlam bed sheets. My feet, hands, eyes, heavy. Rhythms, torturous souls, solar flares ignite, nuclear windshield wipeouts, scalded by pity. The word letter came to mind, a deep, dark depression. I thought of Hesiodus. I lie awake at night, and it is the middle of the day, full of self-pity. I'm alive, layered. One moment heals into another, numb. I feel the burn, the purple dark corridor in my mind's eye. Couldn't relate. Weeping for dread and dreary is too much. Pointless. I have no choice but to relinquish the vainglory. I don't want to feel like killing myself. I don't think anyone ever wants to feel like killing themselves. I had feelings of that nature on Tuesday when I cried. An alien force comes from nowhere, inserts itself in one's mind. I picked scabs on my head until they bled and bled. The only way to live and escape the nightmare is to fly, sitting in my chair. Reminds me of thunder when I was young. Gotten upset with my father. Nowhere words. Gun, bullet, gun. Couldn't save it. Gun, bullet, gun. Screams, whistles, hums. I felt A purple darkness wash over me, the thunder, powerless over my feelings, not over my attitude. There is a soliloquy somewhere here. I felt depressed, so I think I will improvise. I kept hearing immobilized in my armchair butterfly. Is there time for a couple more or so? Yeah. So from how an orchid stays alive. I'd like to read um, actually an excerpt from one of my collections that I wrote that called Under a Tree in Hotchkiss Park. That's waiting publication, looking for a publisher, all that. That is, I would say, that I wrote walking in a circle. That I wrote and edited walking in a circle in Hotchkiss Park in Santa Monica, California, and I wrote it solely while walking in the park and edited it solely there. And so that way the space kind of has a sacred, special place. And so if you go to your local park, honor, of course, keeping social distance and whatnot, what have you, honor your local park. Go there, write a poem, set the park free and set yourself free. Here's an excerpt from that collection. When I sit and stare at the infinite digression, I become an alchemist, split my brain cells for brilliance, likes, and hearts. Pretend I don't think emojis are mystical executives of oceans untold, but in truth, I do. I really do. So that's from that. And I want to read um, a poem. Actually, here's another one from get my papers here. This is another excerpt from Under a Tree in Hotchkiss Park, which is really, it's one long continuous poem, like 60 pages, 50, 60 pages long. So it's one continuous poem. So here's another excerpt from that long continuous poem. And if I was doing it right, I would be walking in a circle reading it, but that's kind of hard to do. So I'm not going to do that. In fact, my back's slightly hurting me, so I'm going to sit down while I read this. Um, a zealous monk notices a shadow, neither on ground nor between ceiling fans, and blank hospital injures web, underwashed by mechanized Mecca. The miraculous, mythic moment is now. Ashore. No eye ever notices a shadow, another reason to transcend the blue. No eye ever paints prison with iodine idolatry and synaptic orchestra, agave nuclear nectar, and gives a fuck. No eye ever rehumanizes human grindstones, grinding vultures against dance floor darkness above mosaic mantra. No eye ever masters this celestial self prison. Your window pane skies a spectral aura beyond deep dark denial, beyond bashful timid auburn augury agony which no eye ever dreamt up like dead rams, eternal sighs, and megaphones wind into nightfall's endearing mosh pit, balancing Mount Vesuvius on tongues in rapture wasted from life of chimes. No eye ever returns from this light of shadows, ever witnesses crimson tapestry enshrined by divine pedestal perfection. No eye ever witnesses sunset and sees the maze, never bends the light bound to his forehead, so wondrous, interlocked with all the world's chrysanthemum, endangered by my own brilliant, dim lit endurance. Yet I eclipse lunar void. Yet I overshadow mere oracle conception, contemplating the miracle of mortality. I'm gonna do one or two more that I want to leave you with kind of an upper of the poem, not something that's a little woo. Um, I've been working on something with the great uh, American Georgian poet David Duffy on a collection called A Double Meaning. We started it last year, and it took a while, and we're still looking for a publisher for it. We've actually had a quote from somebody, an award-winning writer from the New York Times, who wrote a nice blurb about it, and it's called A Double Meaning. So, David, if you're listening to this or watching this, uh, I'd be nowhere without you. This poem is called Without You. Without you, I have no words, no ears to listen, no nose to smell, no eyes to see, no mind to apprehend, no soul to live, no spirit to ascend, no lungs to breathe, no heart to beat, no muscles to strain, no stress to bear, no feet to dance, no tongue to taste. I have nothing. I am nothing without you. And I want to read the poem that Jesse mentioned, um, looking back, um, looking back. I am enough that Jesse mentioned, and this is from Spectrum. I have it here with me. Uh-huh. I believe it's with me. Uh-huh.
You want me to pull it up on the?
I can pull it up.
Okay.
Ask me a question, Jesse.
Actually, so I want to say real quick about Hello Grandpa. It made me think about my own grandmother who passed away like 10 years ago. I actually shed a tear a little bit when you were reading it today because I don't know, like for my dad, we were talking yesterday about like life and stuff, and I thought about like his mother passing away and all that. And that time was a little strange because like during the funeral when we went in southern Mexico, at one point when we were putting the casket in, he actually fell in the hole, and we
Oh,
all
wow.
thought that he died until we pulled him out, and then he puffed out like the dirt that got caught in his throat, and he was okay. But he was saying that it would have been fine for him to pass right then and there, so he can be buried alongside his mom. So that's something I don't know. Oh man, I'm ready. Anyways.
Yeah. And I know that she's here,
Yeah.
watching you, watching all of us. Um, Here is, let me get it out. Um, it is, give me a second. Um, I could read um, a different poem if that works.
Well, I mean, or I could find it because I know where it is.
You know where it is?
Yeah, it's on the
Oh,
website.
yeah.
Yes.
I'll read one I'll read another while waiting. I, I honestly thought I had that. Um,
I found it, but you can go ahead and read the one
oh,
you're gonna read first.
could I?
Yeah.
No, let's read that.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. That
No,
wasn't.
it's okay.
Printers. Can't live with them, can't kill them. They're not living. Because my printer lost it. This is looking back. I am enough.
What happened?
I meander these halls of hopeless entertainment, which life seems to bring me, and remember where I've come from. I was that kid who was picking up trash on the playground and assembling them into something else, something to get away from this place, this planet in which I feel I've been ordained. or ordered. I was the keg stand man in college, trying to prove that he was enough. I was that mathematician hiding in your basement, not coming out in fear that he couldn't do a PhD thesis, and that spending long hours working on a solution to a theorem and laying out the proof in advance would prove to others that it was okay to swish that fine glass of wine atop a mental hierarchy of not enough, plagued by the salvation of this moment, which haunted after me. But yet I wilted away, raced from campus security, when I was afraid to go to the hospital, when I was afraid to be alone. I said and sprayed spitball, fireball, and rabiadio embers, burned myself into urns of truth under the fallacy of slaving wayside and regurgitating lies, spindle web stories from unpursed slip, my unpursued slips with unpursed lips, which were sewn shut by isolation, an isle of subsisting and elixir, which really didn't last for even a nanosecond. When I fell owl-eyed, aching for a glimpse of Eden, I realized she was a shadow that I had counted in transcendental number theory and tried to prove by cloaking my own shadow. But upon the death of my grandfather Mert and upon the life bringer palabras of professors, I realized that I was enough. And upon that meditation in a shrine in Koreatown, I realized I was enough. And upon the reading of my fifth step with my sponsor, I realized I was enough. And upon my reading of my book, Becoming Vulnerable, I realized I was enough. And upon tears of gratitude on which I see myself peering into the window of hope, I realized I am enough. I am enough to keep on making mistakes and finding myself never alone in the shadows. I am enough to find myself humming a tune called gratitude. I am enough to remember it's okay to forget, that it's okay to realize the window is sometimes foggy, and that the image isn't always of a handsome highway, but sometimes a muddy mountain man trekking up the abyssal fade found only in heaven, where everything is enough. Thank you. And thank you, Jesse. Um, Thank you so much, My Place Cafe. I'm honored by becoming vulnerable. Uh, get it for a gift for your mom, maybe. I don't know. It might be a late Mother's Day present. Be sure to go to your local cafe and go to My Place Cafe if you're local here for Pasadena, and support artists and poets. Thank you, Jesse.
Thank you, Josh. Thank you so much for reading for us today here at My Place Cafe. Um, so in your book, Becoming Vulnerable, I just thought about asking this question right now. I don't know if you don't want to answer the question, that's okay.
I'd be more than happy to.
So a lot of the themes in this book talks about being a recovering addict. So last month, as everyone knows, that's on YouTube, Demi Lovato came out with an album called "The Art of Starting Over," and she has several songs about that process. One of them that's really catching my head that was like nonstop last month was the one featuring Ariana Grande called "I Met the Devil Last Night." And then, of course, in interviews promoting the album, people would ask her constantly about California Sober. And then when I asked one of my neighbors about it recently, he said that that's actually a term that's been around for a long time that just basically means that although you are sober, you just simply smoke weed. But Demi herself defined it as like smoking weed and pot while still, like, I guess, being sober. So Elton John actually made a stance about that. I don't know if you're familiar with what his stance is about, like the idea of California sober. So he said that flat out that it doesn't work at all.
Yes, for me, I'm also identify heavily as a marijuana addict,
Hmm.
which for me means when I take one puff of weed, or let's say I have a weed brownie, I want to have more.
Okay.
That phenomenon of craving sets in, and it's actually when I smoke weed like a crackhead.
Oh, okay.
That's the way I smoke weed, and you won't see me for a while, and I end up internally feeling like I'm dead inside. And marijuana is, it's, people say just and only weed, but it's about the physiology of the individual. And, marijuana addiction is a thing. So, I'm with Elton on this one. That California sober isn't necessarily sober.
Hmm. Okay, yeah, that's respectable. That's understandable. Yeah, because for
I'm also smober.
smober, what do you mean?
Smober. I also don't have any nicotine.
Oh, nice. That's good. That's
Yes.
good.
Yes.
Yeah, I have I haven't had a cigarette in like maybe a few years now. Even though almost last one of the last few events I was kind of craving it, but it's okay. I'm glad I didn't actually do it.
There you go.
So with that said, that concludes the poetry night for My Place Cafe. Thank you, Joshua, for being here. We are so glad that you made this a reality for us. And if you want to follow more of Joshua Corwin, you can find him on Twitter at Joshua Corwin1. You can also find him on Facebook under the same name. You can also go to his website, as he's mentioned earlier, joshuacorwin.com, so you can read more about him, his other works, including a link to buying his book, Becoming Vulnerable. And actually, so before mentioning the next event that's coming up, I want to talk about Spectrum. So that's our other event that's coming up here this month. It's for it. They're basically taking over again like they did last month, and it's gonna be for the Spectrum 27 issue, odd or even. And for this event, you will see featured authors that have been published in that issue that will be reading live here at My Peace Cafe through YouTube. And so please tune in for that. That's May 29th at 3 p.m. And what else was I gonna say? Do you think anyone on that's watching right now would be daring enough to actually submit a poem like in a few
Why
hours?
not? Why not? Yeah. If the deadline for it
Tonight?
is tonight at 11:59 Pacific.
Yeah,
So if you're daring enough, why not?
for sure. Okay, and then on so our next event before the Spectrum 27 launch party is May 22nd. It's prose and poetry night. We will have Scott Noon Creeley on with us and reading for us here at My Place Cafe. And that's all the announcements for now. Have a great Mother's Day, everyone, and make my place your place.
I love that. Make my place